What's going on, man? Welcome back to the basement. I'm Ron, and a lot of football happened over the weekend. A lot changed in the fantasy football world as well, with plenty of players getting hurt and roles changing and players emerging. And we are here to break it all down today with my top 10 lessons learned video for week 6, heading into week 7 of the fantasy football season. This is where I give you everything you need to know from stats, usage, the rookie receiver report, the rookie running back carousel, literally everything you need to know to save you hours of time scrolling Twitter and box scores and articles, and just distill it all down into me emptying my head of my top 10 takeaways for the week, all in one digestible video. As always, if you enjoy, leave a like, subscribe if you're new. And our first takeaway from week 6 as we head to week 7 is the world famous rookie receiver report, as always, sponsored by Underdog. When you use promo code RON and you play $5, you will get $50 in bonus funds. Actually, not $50. You will get $100 in bonus funds on the app when you play $5. You can go check out Pick'em, where they have gimme pick'ems for all new customers. You get the drafts. I got in 50 NHL drafts. I was telling you guys about the other sports. I plan on doing probably like 25 to 50 NBA drafts as well. It's just great. Again, I'm not following the injury reports for Dorian Finney-Smith in a random week in January. It's not happening. I think best ball is the best way to play the other sports, but of course you can do the battle royales for NFL, all of that good stuff and more. Use promo code RON. You can find the links to those in the description and the comment section down below. Now let's get down to brass tacks here. We, of course, have the rookie receiver report, where we have every rookie wide receiver and tight end with 30 or more routes run. And then I also added in Terrence Ferguson because I felt like it, and he was a highly drafted player in Dynasty. Now, we have all the players' names, positions. I am also running this spreadsheet from the back end here. You have their week 4, 5, and 6 route percentages, which is just how many of the passing plays are they running routes on the field for. That's just essentially, are they involved in the passing game? Are they like essentially starters? Anything over 90% means they are starting and very involved in the passing game in terms of being on the field when balls are thrown. Then you have targets per route run. These are players that are earning volume on a per route basis. Anything over 20% is a really strong number. Yards per route run, are they being efficient per route? So when they're running routes on the field, are they gaining yards? That's a big deal. Anything over 2 is elite. First downs per route run. When they're on the field, are they moving the chains and getting first downs? That's a great way to be an engine of an offense and be prioritized by coaches. Anything over 10% is really good. And then PFF grade, do they look good on film? Anything over 80 is elite. Anything over 70 is pretty good. And it's something that's tracked for a while. Guys who've had plus 80 PFF grades their rookie years were guys like, I want to say Chris Godwin and Antonio Brown, despite being kind of lesser known. And then more of the big dogs were, your Malik Neighbors of the world, Odell Beckham, Justin Jefferson, Mike Evans, all of those guys. So those are the benchmarks we are looking for here. And we are going to go down the list. I will say we will start with Messy Backfields, sadly, and just get this one out of the way. Look, I'm not a doctor. We won't have, I essentially pull my Patreon Discord. Who do you guys want to hear me talk about? And a lot of it was the injuries, Puka, Messy Backfields. And we'll definitely sort of dust over them, but it's also the day after. We're still waiting for imaging and real reports. And really all I can say about Messy Backfields is it's a sad situation. You can see his per out numbers there, elite across the board. He's been amazing. And you just hate to see this. He has a hamstring injury. He has a week 9 bye. So this was week 6. Maybe he misses week 7, week 8, bye week 9. And then he comes back fully healthy in week 10 would be my baseline expectation. It sucks. That's just what the season has been. Pour one out for Messy Backfields. Why can't we have good things? I do not know. But it's in our best interest to not dwell on the past and just keep trucking forward. So let's start from the top down here. We have Tetairoa McMillan, the good. He scored touchdowns. I say plural touchdowns. I believe he scored 2. Which, for a guy who hadn't scored, he scored 0 touchdowns through the first 5 weeks of his career. Then he scores 2 touchdowns back-to-back against the Cowboys, which is a big deal because we want to see him score points, put up big PPR point days. It was his highest scoring game of the season at 17.9, but it was a bit of a bummer here because what should have been a nuclear 30-plus PPR point performance was only 17.9 because he set season lows in targets and yards. You hate to see that, right? He puts up 3 catches for 29 yards. 2 of those catches were touchdowns, so you love to see that. But if he could have had a 7 for 110 and 2 touchdown stat line, that would have been amazing. But I still feel great about Tetairoa McMillan moving forward in all formats as a legitimate guy. Then you have Io Manor. He is a win for a day 3 wide receiver. And I say day 3 meaning rounds 4 through 7 on day 3 of the NFL draft, that you have to kind of grade these guys on a scale, right? Like, his numbers don't really hold a candle to what Tetairoa McMillan is doing, but the fact that he has any green at all, the fact that he's on the field running routes, it's a big deal for a day 3 player. A lot of these guys end up being absolutely nobodies. Alec Io Manor is an NFL wide receiver, but in terms of putting him in your fantasy lineup, it's tough. He hasn't hit 10 plus PPR points since week 3. The targets and routes are kind of there, but he's attached to Cam Ward is kind of what the deal is at the end of the day. Then you have Isaiah Bond, similar situation. You have I want to say he's undrafted, but he would have been a day 2 pick if not for some off the field issues, but he's also just running routes, which is good, right? His route percentage has increased in all 3 of the last 3 weeks. You get 15.3% targets per out run, but after that, there's nothing to write home about. Dylan Gabriel has been pretty brutal for fantasy football. Isaiah Bond, just a guy running routes in an NFL uniform to this point. Then we have Travis Hunter. This one's pretty loaded. The good. He ran 86% of the routes. That's huge. That was, I believe, a season high, his highest since week 1. So good. 44 of 51 routes. He led the team in routes run. That is absolutely massive. He also had 7 targets. That's as good as you could ask for from Travis Hunter. 86% of the routes, 7 targets in week 6. If you had told me that info back in August, I would be head over heels. Now, the bad. He had his lowest yards per out run of the year, 0.34. He had just 4 catches for 15 yards on his 7 targets. He had his season low ADOT with only a 4-yard ADOT. That's average depth of target. So he's not. He was used purely in a gadgety role. Last week, we actually saw a season high in ADOT. He was down the field making plays. This week, not so much. He might have also costed the Jaguars the game. He lined up offsides on a Brian Thomas touchdown. So, man, we were doing so well last week. Things were trending up. Then this week, he gets the on-the-field usage we've been begging for, and he gives you 4 catches in a potentially game-losing penalty. And I don't know if poetic's the right word, but it sucks because it's very like illuminating that him lining up in the wrong spot, I think, sheds a very bright light on the fact that he is a raw wide receiver. He did not play the real position in college where he was essentially looking to the sideline for a signal to know where to line up and a signal to know what route to run. He had no idea where he was in the progression or how to play leverages certain ways or like how to sit down in a zone truly properly. He was just winning because he's a dog, which is great, but it also means he comes into the NFL with some limitations. Now, I was under the impression that he could just, if that's how he won in college, maybe an offseason of actually refining his game and, kind of learning under Liam Cohen and Brian Thomas, that he could now just ascend to that level in year 1. It's a little bit more tricky than that, especially when you're taking on I'm not saying that he's not a bright kid, because I'm sure he is, but there is a certain level of almost football genius you'd have to be to split your time between defensive meetings and offensive meetings as a rookie in the NFL. It's enough to even ask any first-round wide receiver to pick up an NFL playbook and, learn all 3 positions and be good right away like an Emeka Egbuka has, but it also takes some time for some guys where they're not going to get it right away. So with Travis Hunter, he's in a really weird spot where he's juggling everything. He's trying to learn defense. He's trying to learn offense. He only knows one position on offense, which is they're kind of like slot flanker type of player. I believe they've been calling it the F. Something else that's just like a random note, but that position runs a lot of the jet motions, even on run plays, which I just find to be kind of insane for a player that I imagine they're probably tracking on GPS and trying to make sure that he's not having too high of a mileage on his speedometer sort of idea, to have him kind of jog back and forth across the formation. I get that that's what his position calls for, and I'm a big fan of pre-snap motion. I just would prefer that it's Diami Brown or Parker Washington, if I'm being completely honest. Now, that's a side rant. With Travis Hunter, there's just a lot to really unpack with this. His per out numbers are decent, right? He's earning targets. He's not super efficient. His PFF grade's been bad, but it's also just I don't think that this is indicative of him not being talented. I think it's more that his brain is so spread thin right now between the 2 sides. And that makes this really tricky, where there's like a few outcomes that could happen here. One, that they continue to do this kind of like splitting both ways situation where if I go through and go week by week, we'll go his offensive snaps and then his defensive snap totals. In week 1, 42 on offense, 6 on defense. Week 2, 42 on offense, 43 on defense. Week 3, 37 on offense, 43 on defense. Then 38 on offense, 9 on defense. 39 on offense, 25 on defense. This past week, 58 on offense, 22 on defense. So clearly they're still slanted towards offense, which is nice, but it's also just a lot for him to handle at this point right now. So I wish I had more positive news. Like I think kind of the way this thing goes is it keeps going this way, and he learns on the fly, and we'll see efficiency down the stretch once he kind of like masters the playbook and what he's doing in the NFL. Or we have the more extreme areas of Liam Cohen kind of shuts this whole thing down and says, all right, you're going to play offense only, and then we'll worry about implementing you on defense, in year 2 or year 3, once you actually figure out how to play wide receiver in the NFL. Or the other way, you're going to just play corner, every down corner, and we're going to scrap the offensive stuff, and we will just work on that in the offseason, and we can work towards you being a two-way player, in year 2, year 3, year 4, once you master one side of the ball. I think right now what it's trending towards is really just kind of the same deal of balancing both sides, and the hope is that this was good usage, right? He ran 86% of the routes, but we're not going to get efficiency until he understands the playbook. Like, I'm seeing a lot of football guys on the timeline too in terms of Twitter when Trevor Lawrence kind of like checks out and goes can and does the whole thing. Travis Hunter, a lot of the time, his body language is like, what the hell? Like, I don't know that he even has it understood of what the second play call is. So there's just a lot going on. Sometimes he doesn't know where he's lining up. He lined up off sides. There's going to be growing pains here. It just comes down to if he's going to hit his stride here eventually or if something's going to change. And I think for that, it's tough. I recommended him as a play in my sneaky starts. And I think, again, if you had told me 86% of the routes and 7 targets, I would have said wide receiver 40 is too low. And then he gave you nothing. So he's been a frustrating player this year. He's one of my most drafted players. I promise that if you're feeling it, I'm feeling it too. I still believe that he's a talented player, and he's running more routes than he has at any point in the season so far. So those are all good things. There's just going to be a lot of patience that comes with the Travis Hunter experience here, is what it seems like. Now, our next player here is Mason Taylor. He's a starting tight end in the NFL, which for like a 20-year-old, he's like the youngest rookie on a bad team. That's fine. But it's just tough to expect, especially from like guys like Garrett Wilson or really any of these Jets receivers not named Arian Smith, who, I'll get this out of the way, just a complete waste of an NFL roster spot, 49% to 63% to 72%. That's amazing. But I mean, 4.5% targets per out run, dead last on this list. 0.18 yards per out run, dead last on this list. He has like a couple of first downs and a 52.9 PFF grade. Truly just a baffling pick. I know that every GM and regime can't hit on their day 3 picks, and I don't want to ramble about the Jets too much, but at the time, I was screaming at the top of my lungs to take Torrey Horton or Alec Manor, or maybe they could have gotten like a defensive lineman or somebody that could make an impact. This guy is simply doing Tony Snell cardio out there as a wide receiver. Arian Smith is he's unserious across the board. His route share is really his only positive. I think across the board, he's droppable in damn near every format. Then you have Mason Taylor, who we were just talking about. With these Jets guys, again, outside of Arian Smith, because he's not even hitting the threshold of like real player. But with Mason Taylor, you have to kind of take things with a grain of salt, because you have to remember, Justin Fields in this game had 17 pass attempts for 45 yards. So it's tough to boost your targets per out run and your yards per out run number when the pie is so small. And then on top of that, he's running routes, and Justin Fields has 9 sacks on top of however many scrambles Justin Fields has. Those are empty routes, right? Like, they're still going to count as a route run for Mason Taylor, but there isn't a target or any yards on the play. It's just sacks and throwaways and scrambles. So just something to note when it comes to these per out metrics. Mason Taylor, I just think the fact that he's a starting tight end and he's had a couple of good weeks, I think that's positive for him moving forward. Then we have Trey Harris here. Quentin Johnson gets hurt. Trey Harris fills in. We like to see that. He didn't really do anything crazy. He gave you 5 targets, 4 catches, 27 yards, and a win. Just a stash in Dynasty. Outside of that, really nothing else to write home about. And we'll also cover Rondé Gadsden here as well. Why not on the same team? I've been hearing this, by the way. Like, I put it out on Twitter that it's a big deal that Gadsden goes from 50% of the routes to 61% to 77%. And this week as well, he actually had 1 less route run than Ladd McConkey, who led the team. And he had a team-high 8 targets, tied with Ladd McConkey. And everybody in the comments was like, oh, this is just because Quentin Johnston's out. Does Quentin Johnston play tight end? The Quentin Johnston role got soaked up here. These 85% of the routes, those are Quentin Johnston's. Gadsden took these 77% of the routes away from Tyler Conklin, Will Dissly, whoever else. They have like a bunch of different tight ends that they have out there to block and everything, but this is his. Now, is he going to have 8 targets per game moving forward? No. I would say the targets have definitely come from Quentin Johnston, but really what I care about most for Gadsden is that he's just a full-time tight end. When we talk about these tight ends every week, anything over like 70% of the routes run are guys you can start in your lineup. I'm not telling you that Gadsden's going to be a top 12 start next week, but these are all very positive signs for a day 3 tight end. It's just very rare air to see a day 3 tight end kind of establish himself like this. And these are all great numbers, like 19.6% targets per out run. Isn't that far off of like Fannin and Tyler Warren? He has a better yards per out run than Fannin. He has a better first downs per out run than Fannin and a better PFF grade than Fannin. So I think he deserves to be in all the same conversations as Fannin moving forward from a dynasty perspective, a redraft perspective, whatever, as a probably, like mid to low end tight end too, that you can start depending on how many bye weeks are happening across the NFL, which again, for a day 3 tight end, that's a win. Then we can talk about Tej Johnson below Trey Harris. This is what we do the rookie receiver report for. 27% to 49% to 84%. Ibuka goes down. Godwin goes down. He becomes a full-time wide receiver in this game. Nothing crazy. He had 3 targets, 1 catch, 45 yards, and a touchdown. Essentially, all he had was a touchdown catch, but that's still a big deal. It was a pivotal touchdown catch that kind of like won them the game, the Buccaneers, and was just a big play altogether. I like to see him come up in the clutch like that, and this is going to be a good test with Ibuka still sidelined, with Godwin probably still sidelined, with Mike Evans still sidelined. They got to go into Detroit next week and put together a wide receiver core. It's going to be Tej Johnson. It'll be Sterling Shepard. They have a kid in his second year, Cameron Johnson, who is like kind of in the mix here. But if Tej Johnson's going to be somebody in this league, this is going to be the audition here, and I think he's already done well. So I think that huge green up arrow for Dynasty and a stash in redraft leagues that we'll probably touch on for the waiver wire video. Then we have Tyler Warren. He is, make no mistake about it, he is on the same trajectory as Brock Bowers was last year. I did a Dynasty Rankings update over on the Patreon over the weekend. He is right next to Trey McBride for me as like a second-round pick in Dynasty leagues. Across the board, I mean, he's going toe-to-toe with receivers in this class of leading everybody in targets per out run, behind only Ibuka in yards per out run, leads the entire class in first downs per out run, and a really strong PFF grade that I think is only going to grow as the season goes on. And this is a stat I wanted to read from Ryan Heath over on Twitter. Tyler Warren commanded a 30% target share today, the second time he's done so. It took Brock Bowers until week 11 of his rookie season to do that twice. Since 1970, only Jordan Reed and Keith Jackson have topped Warren's 84.6 PPR points through 6 career games. He is on a historical pace. He's somewhere in the mix of like Jordan Reed to Brock Bowers as the next guy. He is, to me, the next guy. He's honestly, if you want to do a more realistic range, he's somewhere from Sam Laporta to Brock Bowers, but his per out metrics blow Sam Laporta out of the water. I don't think I have it on this sheet right now, but Laporta was like a 1.8 yards per out run guy, kind of thriving off of touchdowns. These numbers don't take into account touchdowns, so he's been better than rookie Laporta, which is really impressive from Tyler Warren. Then we have Jack Besh. Here's the tough thing. This is what the rookie receiver part is here for. 4%. We saw last week 46% up to 80%. He completely stole Dante Thornton's role. Dante Thornton goes from 74 to 56 to 0%. Now, the issue is that Jack Besh registered 0 targets, 0 catches, 0 yards, 0 touchdowns. So does this role stick? We shall see. His first downs per out run still kind of stuck here, but not a great game from him. It seems like they're just going to try and rotate this wide receiver room until they find something between Thornton and Besh. The hope is that next week Besh can bounce back without losing too much of this 80% route share role. After that, we talked about Gadsden. We can talk about Harold Fannin here. Season high in route share. Pretty much like season high in production, season high in targets. I think he might have had 10 targets this week. Fannin had a great day from a PPR standpoint. Yeah, he had 10 targets, 7 catches, 81 yards. Now, before I kind of like victory lap anything with Fannin, who I love, I think is a good player, Njoku got hurt like 2 different times in this game, and the second time he got hurt in the fourth quarter, he was out of the game for good. So I wouldn't get too crazy about Fannin's the tight end 1. You can start him as a top 12 guy moving forward, but this was a very positive look for him. Across the board, he improved his per out metrics, which are all really, really strong for a rookie tight end here. The issue is going to be how long, is Njoku going to get traded? Is this injury serious? And is Dylan Gabriel going to be the quarterback for the rest of the season? Two questions that I think are going to be very important to how the season looks for Fannin, but he's somebody in Dynasty ranked as like a top 12 guy. I'm all over him long term. I just don't know in this environment. Like a guy like Jerry Jeudy is not even really startable if Fannin can be a real thing in fantasy football in 2025. Then we can get to Matthew Golden. This was our first true post-bye rookie bump. Packers go on bye. Other side of the bye, Matthew Golden bumps his PFF grade here from 62.1 to 71 in just 1 week. His yards per out run goes up to 1.78. He gets 5 targets, 3 catches, 86 yards for 13.2 PPR points. That's going to play. That's going to be fine. I believe that he's somebody as well that like gets usage in the rushing game, which is fun for Matthew Golden. I don't know if he got any today. I'm just trying to see what he had. How did he get to 13? He had 3 catches, 86 yards. He must have had a carry in this game. I might as well look. Not that like you guys are going to really care if he got a carry, but I'm curious how he got to 13 PPR points in this game, unless if I'm missing something. Yeah, he had 2 carries for 16 yards. Okay, so that makes a lot more sense. They love to give him touches in the rushing game for whatever reason. Now, the only thing that I would say is like kind of bad here is his route share didn't budge. So he actually went from 72% down to 68%. I wouldn't say downgraded, it just stayed the same is what I would say. So that's going to be the tricky part. In this room where they rotate guys between Dobbs and even like rookie Savion Williams gets routes here and there and touches here and there, and Dontavion Wicks, who I think is banged up, and then you have Christian Watson potentially coming back, and you have Jaden Reed potentially working back. The hope is that this game is good enough that he now earns a real role of like 80% of the routes moving forward. That's going to be the hope, but he's still a really boom-bust flex start if this is going to be his route usage on a per-week basis. We'll see if that improves moving forward. Then we can talk about Isaac Tesla. This was, to me, a huge game for him, even though he had like no production. I don't think he registered a single target. Like he kind of just did cardio out there. I do want to double-check. But to me, yeah, he had 0 targets, which I think is actually fine. Now, his pro metrics aren't great. Yes, I get it. But you have to understand the competition in this room. He has Amon-Ra St. Brown. He has Sam Laporta. He has Jameson Williams. He has Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery. He's like the 6th option at best. I don't really care to see him blow up the per-out metrics. What I care to see is him on the field, because this is a team, every game matters, and he was out there running 68% of the routes in a primetime game versus the Chiefs. He was a legitimate part of this offense, which to me is a big deal. I think Khalif Raymond had an injury, which might have affected things here, but just the fact that he's trusted in any capacity over like a dusty vet like a Khalif Raymond or whoever's maybe behind him, right? Where the Lions always have one of these guys, whether that's been like Tim Patrick over the years or Marvin Jones over the years. I know both of those guys aren't on the team anymore, but you get what I'm saying, where they've had other veterans that they can go to. This to me is a huge sign of trust. So I think you stash Tesla. I don't know that I don't know that he'll ever be startable in redraft, but for Dynasty, he's a guy. Like, to me, this is real. This is not some like what for context for redraft guys watching this video. When he was drafted, he was supposed to be like a day 3, maybe undrafted guy, and the Lions took him in round 3. It was a huge surprise, but they like him, and he looks the part on an NFL field, which to me is a huge deal. Then I have the rest in terms of these notes where this is just me bouncing around. You have Mitchell Evans. Still really strong per route, looks good. He actually kind of bumped down to 23%, then back up to 44% of the routes with JT Sanders sidelined. I don't know that he'll hold a real role once JT Sanders is back, but he's at least showing something as a day 3 tight end to be a real guy in the NFL. Then you have Gunnar Helm, who they wanted to use more. He goes from 55% of the routes down to 36%, which isn't great. It's really just that Chico Okonkwo is that good. Like, Okonkwo and Gunnar Helm are no-name tight ends, but they're both good enough to be real NFL rotating tight ends in the NFL, which I think is a good thing for both of them. Per route, I mean, 18.8% targets per route run as a tight end who is a nobody on the Titans is a big deal. I want to say that's a better number than Alec Manor. Everything else is like somewhat decent across the board. And then we can talk about Terrence Ferguson, who I included here on purpose, where he gives 0% of the routes in week 4 to 6% to 28%. Nothing really great per route. They gave him like a carry that was kind of a throwaway, but just be aware that Terrence Ferguson is kind of arising from his slumber. Now, if that just means that he's a fine stash in Dynasty, sure. I don't know that he's ever startable in redraft, but just something to note that Ferguson has gone from a healthy scratch to somebody who's now working into the rotation for the Rams. Now, right off the back of that, we are going to go directly into, and it's really just the way that I kind of formatted my notes, is we're going to go right into the rookie running back carousel, which isn't sponsored by anything crazy. It's technically still sponsored by Underdog, but it's really just sponsored by the channel. If you enjoy the rookie breakdowns, I feel like no one else in the space goes this deep on the rookies every single week. Just make sure you're subscribed, all right? Only like half of you guys are subscribed. It's a tough part in the season. The channel, like every channel across the board right now, instead of, in August, it was up and to the right. Now, it's just kind of a slow march until week 17. It's kind of what it is. So if you're still sticking with me, if you tune in every week, subscribe, leave a like. It helps us out a ton because we have really nothing else building momentum here this time of the year. Now, this is a similar deal. We have the snap shares across the board, each player's points per game, their PPR per touch, and their PFF grade, just to give you a lay of how often they're on the field, what's their production like, what's their efficiency like, what do they look like on film. Now, first up, we have Ashton Jeanty. I think for me, the big thing is that there was a blowout last week versus the Colts. They take him out for just a 55% snap share. He goes back up to 79%. So he is the bell cow workhorse on this team. That was known, but for a stretch there, like weeks 2 and 3, that was not the case. They were rotating him out for like Zamir White, which was nuts. That is now all gone. He also has 8 targets through his first 4 games, which was bad, right? That's 2 targets per game. Over his last 2 games, he's been at 11 targets. That's a 5.5 average. So first 4, 2 targets per game. Last 2, he's at 5.5 targets per game. That's huge. They've been doing a lot less of the taking him off the field in passing down situations, which for him is going to be massive because the Raiders aren't going to play the Titans every week and score touchdowns all over the board. But 15-plus points per game from Jeanty, you will take. He is a top 12 option moving forward. Then you have Scatabo from the Thursday night game. I don't usually talk much about the Thursday night games in these videos, but he was an absolute monster. He scores 3 touchdowns. He puts up 30-plus PPR points. And he had a 72% snap share, better than his week 5 snap share, despite Tyrone Tracy now back from injury. We had talked all offseason. Did I draft some Tyrone Tracy? Sure. But I was very firm that Scatabo just has this role of pass catching, size, and goal line appeal, just in terms of like his tough running style. And that's just kind of come to fruition where he had all of the goal line touches in this game, which, that resulted in 3 touchdowns. He's converting on those. He's catching passes. And I think the big part about him, outside of being the RB11 in points per game, if you want to just count from week 2 on, he's the RB6 in points per game, is he's an identity player for the Giants. I know that sounds like kind of corny, but him and Jackson Dart's relationship and this big win over the Eagles kind of on the back of this like new spark that both of these rookies has provided this team is just kind of, you can't really put it into words what they've meant to this Giants team. Like they've just the two of them have almost saved Brian Dable's job. And kind of like brought happiness back to the Giants. They got to beat the Eagles in primetime. Like the vibes are so high here, and they all ride off of Scatabo. Like his, the tongue out stuff, the backflips, the emotes, him playing 2K before the game. Like he is, I wouldn't call him larger than life, but he's much bigger than any day 3 running back really should be from a kind of team level and national perspective. So I do think there is some merit to that. Like it's in their best interest to make sure that Scatabo is a front-facing part of this team, just because like him and Dart have kind of genuinely turned the culture around in New York, and things are looking up for them for the first time in a while. Then we can talk about Quinshon Judkins. Weird game. They get dominated by the Steelers, but Judkins only played 41% of the snaps in this game, but that was really just a function of a lot of, like, I think Dylan Gabriel had over 50 pass attempts. So they take him off the field in those situations, which suck, but he was still a guy who had over 70% plus of the running back carries, which means that he's still the between the tackles, workhorse style back, goal line back, all that good stuff, but he's not going to get involved in the passing game, especially because of how much this team loves Jerome Ford. He gets a perfect bounce back spot next week versus the Dolphins, so we saw Rico Dowdle last week completely dismantle. So, we also have Trevion Henderson here. This one is tough. No Gibson. It does not matter. He is still, I wouldn't say the doghouse, but goes from 48% of the snaps to 29%. They have no desire to put this guy in the game more, to give him more touches, and it's tough to beg for it because, one, they win this game versus the Saints. Now, it's the Saints, so who really cares? But they win this game. They won against the Bills last game, so it's not like this is a 4-2 team. This isn't like a 2-4 team who needs to see the young players develop. It's a team that is only really concerned with winning football games, and they trust Ramondre Moore despite the fumbles, which I think is nuts, But also on the other side of that, Henderson has done nothing to show that he is this special difference maker, crazy playmaker with the ball in his hands. 0.82 PPR per touch. I get that that's more than Judkins and it's more than Genty, but it's a very heavily skewed stat towards receptions, because if you just simply catch the ball, that's 1 PPR per touch, right? If a reception is 1 PPR at minimum, right? Like a catch for 0 yards is 1 PPR per that touch. So the more of a receiving back you are, the better you're going to get pumped in this stat. And the fact that him and Genty are like neck and neck at 0.82 and 0.77 to me speaks volumes about how inefficient TreVeyon Henderson has been. His PFF grade is awful at 52.6. It's tough. Again, it's both. It's both. On one side, it's Rabel being very old school and not playing the rookie. On the other side, is that Henderson hasn't done anything to force their hand. So it's a really tough spot. Again, I talked about it last week, but he's looking like a rough pick. I picked him in a bunch of spots. It's looking rough. I don't know. Like, it's just not clear what has to happen for him to be more involved outside of a Ramondre injury moving forward. Then we can talk about RJ Harvey. Very similar situation. Tyler Bidet goes down. Jaleel McLaughlin fills in, and nothing really changes. Still about 8 points per game. He's a little more efficient than Henderson, right? 0.98 PPR per touch, better PFF grade. I think that Harvey has looked better on the field, but it still hasn't really equated to anything. He only had 2 carries in this game. He's kind of now reverted back to, after a game where he had I want to say 12 to 14 carries 2 weeks ago. That was the game where he outproduced J.K. Dobbins and everyone's going crazy. Since then, he's kind of just reverted back to like a passing game specialist. He has 3+ catches in each of his last 4 games. But again, only 2 carries in his last game. So he's just kind of getting used in the receiving game. He's been efficient, but he's just sort of been a gadget player. You just have to kind of have patience with both of these guys moving forward and keep them out of your lineups until it is obvious. Then we have LaQuint Allen, who I added here. He's really nothing but a pass-catching back, 1.5 points per game. The 1+ PPR per touch, again, is because he's just a pass-catching back. But quietly, he's a big issue because he's taking routes, targets, 2-minute drill snaps, third down snaps from Basil Tutin. Nothing else really to note besides LaQuint Allen getting in the way of Basil Tutin on those passing down reps. Then we can talk about, I guess we can kind of touch on Ollie Gordon. He's just been the same. He's just essentially the handcuff to Devon Achane. You have Caleb Johnson there, still hovering about 20% of the snap share, even with Gainwell and Warren back. Is impressive for him. He hasn't really looked good, though. Samson, firmly in a really rough spot. Only 16% of the snaps this week, despite the catch-up passing game script, which really only benefits Jerome Ford right now. Jerome Ford is operating firmly ahead of Samson in those situations, and if that holds, Samson's just somebody you can kind of cut and redraft and might not even really have a prayer in Dynasty in the long term. Then we just talked about Basil Tutin. He is efficient, explosive. They use him in the screen game here and there, but his snap share has now declined, and he is getting taken off the field in passing down situations for LaQuint Allen. So he is now firmly just ETN's handcuff. If ETN gets hurt, Tutin slots into the ETN role, and Allen stays at the passing down back is how things look here. Then you have Rashard Smith across the bottom. He's been phased out of being like a 25% snap share guy, but he's still getting touches when he's in the game, which is nice, and he's looking good on those touches. He's kind of in this wide receiver, hybrid, running back. Everyone makes the comparison to Jerick McKinnon. It is a very Jerick McKinney role. He's playing 8% of the snaps this week, 10% of the snaps, but he did have 4 opportunities. He had 4 opportunities last week. So when he's in the game, they're scheming up touches for him, but that's kind of it. I'm personally fine burning the roster spot on Rashard Smith, hoping that from weeks 13 on, he can be what Jerick McKinnon was, I think, in 2022. But there's also downside that he is a complete dud and gadget player on the Chiefs. And then I'll touch on DJ Giddens, only 3% of the snaps this week. I think he was out-snapped by Amir Abdullah. So that's just notable because DJ Giddens was somebody I was holding on to as a pure handcuff behind Jonathan Taylor. That is now much less certain and somebody you can probably drop in redraft leagues because I think it'd be a split backfield if JT ever went down. Now, our third takeaway here is a segment called Messy Backfields. We're going to go around the NFL and talk about the messy backfields across the league. First up is the Chargers backfield. We'll see how long this lasts, but Kamani Vidal was the guy here. From Dwayne McFarland on Twitter, Kamani Vidal had 22.8 fantasy points, 67% of the snaps, 72% of the attempts, 56% of the routes, 11% target share. He looked great. He's a borderline RB2, but as he kind of noted here, we saw with Michael Carter, these roles don't stick. The Chargers owe Vidal nothing. They could trade for Breece Hall tomorrow, and like that would be fine, right? They owed this guy nothing. He was a practice squad guy. I love Kamani Vidal coming out of school, coming out of Troy, but you know, it didn't really work out last year. So he's like a fringe RB2 moving forward until things change. I think Hassan Haskins is pretty dead in the water, but again, things change so quickly that I wouldn't get any crazier than ranking Vidal as like the RB26 in a given week with buys and injuries, which speaking of, we can go to Arizona, which is now just like the ugliest split of all time. By the way, this is from the Fantasy Life Utilization Report over on their website. As you can see, it's just super messy. And look, I might edit that out. I might not. I don't know. Sometimes you just need a drink of water. Sometimes you just need one. But with Michael Carter, Bam Knight, DeMarcado. I believe DeMarcado gets hurt in this game. Carter, 46% of the snaps to Knight's 49%. I mean, just tough. Like, Bam Knight scores a touchdown. Carter gets the passing down role where he's the 100% of the 2-minute drill snaps. So here's kind of the ring around the rosy here. Is DeMarcado gets hurt. Michael Carter then fills in for DeMarcado's role of the passing down specialist. Then Bam Knight looked better in week 5, so he now took the Michael Carter role of the between the tackles grinder. But it didn't really amount to anything. Knight got a lucky touchdown in this game, and then Carter gave you 8.4 PPR points. Really tough all around to parse through. They're all going to be desperation, like RB3 plays, like especially Carter and Knight here until Benson is back. Then we have Tennessee. This one was weird. Tyjae Spears from JJ Zachariason here outsnapped Tony Pollard 36-26, running twice as many routes. And that's notable because, yes, it was in a deficit, right, where they're trying to play catch-up against the Raiders, but the Titans are going to be in catch-up mode against pretty much every team out there. So Tyjae Spears outsnapping him is a big deal. I will say Pollard still had 10 for 34 rushing and 2 catches for 13 yards. So we had 12 touches to Spears' 9 touches despite the on-the-field snap share disparity. But this is now going to be a equal split. Tony Pollard is probably going to be somewhere in like the late RB20s, Tyjae Spears, and somewhere in like the mid to early RB30s, where both of them are in a pretty nasty committee here. And speaking of nasty committees, we have Seattle. And this one's just so tough. I wish I had something more positive here, right? Where Charbonnet from the top played 14 more snaps than Kenneth Walker against the Jags. He also ran 7 more routes on the season. Charbonnet has 60 rushes for 156 yards and a 32% success rate. Walker has 78 carries for 364 yards and a 42% success rate. Charbonnet has been the worst back by pretty much every metric. It has not mattered. David Gattiari here, who is a huge Kenneth Walker bull in the offseason, waves the white flag, and I don't blame him. Like, it kind of is just accepting this for what it is. Walker played less snaps, ran less routes, and had less carries than Charbonnet in week 6, and has just 1 reception in 5 straight games. We're not getting an RB1 season without an injury to Charbonnet, which I think he's right. Walker is now just a back-end RB2 moving forward. Charbonnet is a high-end RB3. They're winning games. The offense looks good. And these are just kind of what the roles are. And just to kind of hammer home, you have from Jeff Bell in Week 6. They both had 37 scrimmage yards and 4.2 half PPR points. It's just tough sledding for both. It was a tough matchup versus the Jags. I will say the Jags are a pass funnel that we talked about in the Sneaky Start show, is why we love Sam Darnold this week, but it also just sucks. We'll see if things happen. Like, Walker's going to have his weeks. I think Charbonnet is going to have his weeks as well, but this is like firmly an ugly split. Same deal in Pittsburgh. Warren comes back healthy, but Gainwell had the huge game. I believe that was in London overseas, and now, or no. I don't know why I thought that game was overseas. Did the Steelers play overseas? They did, against the Vikings. Yes, that's what I'm remembering it for. Gainwell went absolutely crazy that morning because Warren was a late inactive. Now, with all 3 of them back in the mix, we get 30 snaps for Warren, 20 for Gainwell, 11 for Caleb. Kind of a perfect across the board. 11 attempts for Warren, 6 for Gainwell, 6 for Caleb Johnson, 2 targets for Warren, 6 targets for Gainwell, 0 for Caleb. So it is now a nasty 3-back committee. The Browns are a tough defense, so it's not like one of them can't emerge as like a startable player, but this is going to be really yucky until, maybe Jaylen Warren is kind of still coming back from injury and can sort of ascend back up the depth chart, but this is going to be really tough to parse through, especially like Caleb Johnson's the one that's really tough because he went from being a healthy scratch to now he is going to have a 25% share. So now there's only 75% for Warren and Gainwell to fight over, and things are just going to get really ugly there. We can talk about the Rams. It feels like an ongoing debate with the Kyron guys where I said this role wouldn't stick. It did not stick. 21.7% target share in week 5 for Kyron, was back at 7.7%. And then also his running back share went from 93% to 72%, which is nice, but also Blake Corum gets hurt in this game. We'll see if Blake Corum is out long term. We'll see if Jarquez Hunter gets called up. But the days of like 90% plus snap share Kyren are not here anymore, which is what I've been saying the entire time. He's like a fine mid to high end RB2, but the idea that he's now like the RB10 rest of season as like a real RB1 because last week Corum fumbled and Kyren had like the game of a lifetime, it's just personally not how I see it. We'll see what happens with Corum. Maybe Corum gets hurt and this sort of triggers Kyren back into the 90% plus role, but everybody in the National Football League is an injury away from a better role in the NFL. Then we can talk about the Jets just for a second here. This is infuriating. I've talked about it before. Breece Hall has a way of like not getting the right usage from his coaches early on, and then eventually they're like, what's the meme where I think it might have been Lil Yachty where he's like, and he's like looking on his computer or whatever, and it's like, oh, that makes sense. It's like, oh, we should have our best player out there on third downs when the whole game is on the line or the season's on the line. He's our second best pass catcher at worst behind Garrett Wilson. The Jets still haven't figured that out. The last two games without Braylon Allen, Breece Hall has dominated the touches, but in terms of the routes run, 43% to 40%, that cannot cut it. Like this needs to be 60 to 20% at absolute minimum in favor of Breece Hall. And until that happens, it's going to be tough because they're not going to score enough touchdowns or be efficient enough on offense for Breece Hall to be better. He had 22 rush attempts in this game and only 5.9 PPR points. I think better days will be ahead. The Broncos are a really tough matchup, but if those routes could come, like if those routes, again, if that route share could get to 65% or better, then Breece Hall could be a top 12 running back rest of season pretty easily in fantasy. Then our fourth takeaway, we had some backup quarterbacks in the NFL. We had Joe Flacco and Jacoby Brissett, both not look terrible. When we look at the quarterback efficiency on the week, so CPOE and EPA per play, which is just kind of per play efficiency and then accuracy based on your ADOT. They were both like, neither of them, we're not expecting world beaters, but just the fact that they're not in that bottom left of Dylan Gabriel, Cooper Rush, Justin Fields is a huge W. They both played surprisingly well. We had Joe Flacco in this game, where I said to sell the Bengals on my sell high video last week. I'd probably take that back now, at least for Jamar Chase, where this we'll see if this sticks. We'll see how things go moving forward. But Joe Flacco had 45 pass attempts in this game, second most on the entire week, and he had 219 passing yards, which for that amount of attempts isn't good. But it was against the Packers, and he had 2 passing touchdowns. And I think the most important part is the Ian Hartitz tweet here of Jamar Chase had 12 targets, and T. Higgins had 8 targets on half of the team's 40 pass attempts per game today. I assume that he used 40, maybe like throwaways didn't count, but they had half of the pass attempts. That's huge. If we can just consolidate the target share, even if they're not efficient, that's going to play for both of the wide receivers. So I actually think Chase is a easy top 6 wide receiver moving forward, and then T. Higgins is a boom bust, like wide receiver 3, somewhere in that range of like Jameson Williams of just like, he's somewhere between wide receiver 30 to wide receiver 45, something like that, which is like fine. It's not what you drafted him for, but it's inching towards more of a startable receiver in fantasy football. And then from Chris Wecht here, this is the tough one. Chase Brown's tough. He only played 53% of the snaps for the Bengals, only 56% of the carries. Samaje Perine had 75% of the inside the 10 snaps. He says it's over for Chase Brown. It probably is. He's probably relegated down to that Tony Pollard, like RB 30-ish range for rest of season. And it's looking really tough for Chase Brown moving forward. And then we can talk about the other backup quarterback of Jacoby Brissett, who had, from J.J. Zacharyson here, 320 passing yards and 2 touchdowns against the Colts. Kyler Murray has done that just 7 times in his career, and he hasn't done it since week 8 of 2022. That's a crazy stat. He used to be, hooping in a fashion where he had 300-plus passing yards and 2 passing touchdowns, and it just hasn't been the case over the last few years. In my Flacco take, I've been pretty anti, this is a quarterback upgrade when you go to the backup. Or I actually said it as much with Marv, but Brissett here, we'll see how, a lot of times these backups come in and they provide, a spark, right? Think Jake Browning coming in for Joe Burrow in that game, and then the next few weeks happened and he sucked. These things can kind of crumble at any point in time. We've actually seen Brissett play pretty good ball over an entire season sample, so we'll see how things go here, but McBride gives you his first 20-plus PPR point game of the year, and I think, honestly, the pass catchers probably get an upgrade with Brissett, especially with how much the running game is non-existent. They're just going to lean on the passing game, and if Brissett's going to stand in there and give his playmakers a chance, then the passing game should get an upgrade. Now, our fifth takeaway here is let's put Rico Dowdle in perspective here, man. Genuinely, this wasn't just some random guy popping off. I get it was the Dolphins, I get it was the Cowboys, but This is nuts here. This is from Datarama. Rico in these past 2 games, 473 scrimmage yards, 11 missed tackles forced, 10% explosive run rate, kills Chuba Hubbard on everything, right? And I think it just speaks the most. 473 scrimmage yards versus 311 scrimmage yards. And just to put in perspective again, like this is not, I'm not saying that Rico Dowdle is going to run away and lead the league in rushing yards. What I'm saying is that it's one thing for a random backup running back to like score 4 touchdowns across 2 games, put up a bunch of PPR points, and then goes back to the bench when Hubbard comes back. I don't think that that's the situation here. Or if you look at scrimmage yards over a 2-game span since 2010, only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 running backs since 2010 have had 450 or more scrimmage yards over a 2-game span. It is Saquon, Le'Veon Bell, Doug Martin, Dalvin Cook, Josh Jacobs, Todd Gurley, and Rico Dowdle. All those guys above him are first, second, and third round picks in the NFL draft. Rico Dowdle, an undrafted free agent on the Panthers, just did this. Over the last 15 years, he is one of 7 running backs, and he is the undrafted one on the worst team, which to me is really, really impressive. And I just think it goes to show that this is not just a flash in the pan. This is going to be, at worst, a committee moving forward. And at best for Rico Dowdle, like a true, like he's now the top dog. They've won both of these games versus the Dolphins and the Cowboys. They're like, I think they're at 500 for the first time in like 3 or 4 years or something. They're riding high off the back of Rico Dowdle, and kind of to draw the parallel to Cam Scatterbo, I just see like this is a turning point for the team. He is not the face of the franchise in the same way Scatterbo is, but you know he's been getting hype, like clips on the internet of what was it? He was like telling him to buckle up, and then comes back after the game. He's like, I guess I didn't buckle up or whatever. He is, giving this team some aura. They're winning games, and I just don't see them being like, oh, well, Chuba Hubbard's back. It's time for you to just warm the bench. Like, this is going to be a real split, and I think Dowdle is going to have every opportunity to be the lead back moving forward. My 6th takeaway will be an L here of just some perspective on what JSN is doing this year. And it really sucks that he's probably my biggest miss this year. I'm trying to think through. He's probably my biggest miss, if I'm being honest. And it absolutely sucks because JSN has me, like for those of you guys that watch me in the offseason, I almost to a fault, I like the young receivers, right? This year, we loved Emeka Egbuka. We loved a lot of the high-end guys here. Roma Dunze was somebody that I loved as well. George Pickens. And JSN was so obvious. Year 3 breakout, but his price was so high. He was like an early third on like underdog for a while, like a mid third in the high stakes leagues we play. And then he kind of started falling back to like 3-4. And my biggest holdup was just like, is Sam Darnold going to be enough? There's going to be a run-heavy team with Kubiak. Is JSN going to be enough? Somebody was like a 1.8-ish yards per out run last year, a back-end wide receiver too. And I just didn't bake in enough that he could have just, every year 3 breakout has the potential to be something like this. Like this kind of reminds me of, I'm trying to think of, this reminds me actually, I think of like Chris Godwin's I think it's his year 3 breakout where he like damn near outscored Mike Evans that year. That's what JSN's having this year. And this is possible for every year 3 breakout, but for every JSN, there is a, I was into Zay Flowers, but he was cheaper. I wouldn't say Zay Flowers has been a bust, and it's really been more outside of his control of like Lamar Jackson. But just trying to think over the years of like year 3 breakout, this guy's going to be awesome, then he's not awesome. It happens a lot. So these guys aren't sure things, but when they hit in a big way, and that's why we are so obsessed with the whole idea of breakout running backs and breakout wide receivers. And just kind of like looking back, I wish I was just into JSN. I wouldn't even say it was obvious, though, because, again, he's attached to Sam Darnold, new offensive staff in Seattle. We knew it was going to be a run-heavy scheme. It just hasn't mattered. Like you can see here from the bottom, the reason why the volume hasn't mattered is because he is just dominating this passing game in a way that's like unfathomable. It's Puka Nacua level stuff here. You look at the bottom from Ryan Heath, highest single-game target shares of 2025. It is JSN at 56.5% in Week 1, 48.1% in Week 6. Like he is the passing offense. I thought this was a really good tweet from Carter Donick on Twitter, who's more of kind of like, I wouldn't say a meme guy, but, somebody who's just kind of tweeting just a tweet. But I think it's a really good point. I'm not going to call Sam Darnold a kingmaker. Like, I think JSN's a truly talented receiver, and he's earned everything he's gotten. But there's something to be said about a quarterback in Sam Darnold that's just understood, going back to the Vikings last year with Justin Jefferson, of just feed the best guy on the field. Let's not overthink anything. So he says Darnold went to the Stafford school of feed your stud and pass with straight A's. I'm emotional. Again, I'm not going to give him the crown of kingmaker, and I wouldn't do it to Stafford either. Like, Calvin Johnson's an all-time receiver. Cooper Kupp's an all-time receiver. Puka Nacua, all of these guys. Like, they didn't succeed because of Stafford, but Stafford was a boost in a way, if that makes sense. And I think Darnold, like, it wouldn't shock me if that's kind of what he could be moving forward, just from I think he's proved that he's going to be a long-term starter in the NFL. And it's just kind of different. Like, you look back to kind of like Geno, where he was also one of these late career guys, and even like, I guess I would say Baker to a lesser extent as well, didn't zero in on their like 40% plus target share for Baker, who kind of spreads it out and threw the ball to Cameron Johnson a billion times this past week. And it's not a takeaway to Baker. It's just a niche thing to notice in this silly game we play of fantasy football, that there are certain guys that definitely stare down the barrel of their number one receiver and make sure they're getting targets. And that's what Sam Darnold does. And then he's learned with Jefferson. It's just like, that is the way to go when you have a truly special talent on your hands. You can see he says, we're sweeping everybody eats FC in 4, if this is what it looks like, where through his first 8 pass attempts, Sam Darnold, he had 5 completions for 117 yards and a touchdown. They all went to JSN. And that's really all that needs to be said. And we can also see this as well. If you just want to put in perspective, like, Puka's getting all the shine. Of course he should. But with JSN, he's the only guy that can hold a candle to Puka right now in terms of per route efficiency and per route target earning. Where you look here from Datarama, targets per out run, no other receiver is above 31%, JSN 37%, Puka 43%, yards per out run, Puka 4.3%, JSN 4.32, no one else above 2.82. So these guys, like JSN, of course, from a production standpoint, isn't on the same level as Puka, because Puka is going to have a lot more passing volume with the Rams, but on an efficiency per route basis, like, JSN is playing out of his skull right now, and I can't stress that enough. He is now at 21.5 points per game as the wide receiver 2 behind only Puka. I did a Dynasty Rankings update over the weekend and put him as, I think, like my wide receiver 7, which feels crazy. Like, it's essentially like, you have like Puka, Jefferson, Chase, in whatever order. Then you have CeeDee Lamb. Then you have Neighbors, Amon-Ra St. Brown, and then it's JSN. And if you wanted to put JSN over Amon-Ra St. Brown and Neighbors, you certainly could. I think that he's wide receiver 4 at best, and I wouldn't bat an eye at all. Wide receiver 5. I mean, I probably still have him behind CD, the 2 LSU receivers, and Puka, but that's where we're at with JSN right now, which is really crazy. Now, I will say, something I mentioned a couple weeks ago when I gave JSN his flowers earlier is something I pride myself on fantasy football, and something that you'll see when I draft my teams on stream, is there's never a player, even if I put in a title or something to get people to click on it, there's never a player I just period won't draft. Every player has a price. It was actually funny in my half PPR home league. So JSN gets a downgrade there, and most of my home league is using my rankings. It's just kind of the nature of the beast. A couple of them will buy it and then they'll share it around, and it's why I have 0 edge in my home league. And it sucks, but it's the nature of the game. I don't really care enough. It's a home league with my buddies. If they don't use my rankings, fine, whatever. But what that created was an environment where they saw I was also lower on JSN, and I got to scoop him in the 4th round of this draft. So I've been actually enjoying JSN on one of my teams this year in my home league, and that has been great. So just to kind of point out there that there's rarely players I fully fade, and I'm always willing to catch guys at value. Like, even guys I don't like. Like, I have a Marvin Harrison Jr. team, and he was somebody that I didn't really like drafting, but it was on stream and he got to me in the 5th round. That one didn't work out, but it's something I'm always willing to do, is kind of what I'm trying to say here. I'm rambling, but you get what I'm saying. Like, there shouldn't be players that you do not draft. There should just be players you do not draft in certain ranges, I think would be the takeaway on that tangent. Now, our 7th takeaway is the year 2 wide receivers. I got a ton of questions about Ladd McConkey and Brian Thomas. Are they sell highs? Are they going to stick? And here's what I'll say with Brian Thomas. Weeks 1 through 3 from Ryan Heath here. Only 8.5 points per game, but still really good volume. Over the last 3 weeks, he's improved his target share. He's improved his production up to wide receiver 13. He's been at 15 points per game as the wide receiver 14. He had another touchdown, of course, called back because of Travis Hunter lining up off sides, which was brutal. But I think Brian Thomas is back. This was a tough opponent in the Seahawks defense. Definitely a more pass funnel-ish defense. So it was a good matchup per se, but still I think the Seahawks are well coached with McDonald, and they play really good football. So Brian Thomas, I think, is all the way back as a mid to high-end wide receiver 2 that I feel fine about. But I will say, when you kind of zoom out to Dynasty, and we're sort of getting to the part of the year where I will zoom out, and it's Dynasty and redraft when we talk about rest of season, is he doesn't get to just get slotted back up to like the wide receiver 8 like we were drafting him at, right? Like, all these expectations sort of fluctuate over the season, but to me, he's not like a firm wide receiver 2, right? He's somewhere in the wide receiver like 13 to wide receiver 18 range rest of season, which, based on what happened in the first 2 to 3 weeks, you will take that all day long. But the guy you were drafting at the 1-2 turn, you were hoping could ascend to 20-plus points per game, probably not happening at this point. Similar deal with Ladd McConkey from Ryan Heath here. Weeks 1 through 5, 18% target share, 42 yards per game, 9.7 points per game. Then you had, in week 6, a 23.7% target share, 100 receiving yards, 23 PPR points. So this one's a little more fraudulent, if either of them are fraudulent at all, right? Because instead of an honorable 23 points, he had to do this with QJ out. So the question becomes, when QJ's back in the lineup, can Ladd repeat this? And I just have such a hard time. Even though I've completely capitulated, Quentin Johnston's a fine NFL receiver. He's a good NFL receiver. But just based on what we've seen of Ladd, he actually makes the game-winning play to get down the sideline, get out of bounds. I don't know if I think the broadcast kind of said maybe he shouldn't have gone out of bounds, but he made the game-winning play. He's a very good player per route. He's still really good player in terms of earning volume. The film guys say he gets open all over the tape. So with Ladd McConkey, I just have such a hard time saying it's fraudulent. Like, I know the splits with Quentin Johnston aren't great, but I still do think, like, I feel about him similar to Brian Thomas, where we saw a good game. Can he get into a groove? This team has no, like, Kamani Vidal looked good in this game, don't get me wrong, but it was, against the Dolphins? So any running back can look good against the Dolphins. And then you're going to get a situation where their running back room is atrocious. This offensive line is going to get Joe Alt back here soonish. They're still passing the ball at a high rate. And if Ladd McConkey can be at the focal point of that, especially with Keenan Allen fading, I think that's also kind of a slept-on part of this, is it's also Keenan Allen is freeing up some space where he's completely slowed down, where he went from 20, 17, 20 to 9, 11, and then 7 here. So he's now really fallen off after kind of getting buoyed by touchdowns, and it wouldn't shock me if, as an older player, like, he's 33, if, like, things kind of, cool off for Keenan Allen. So I don't know. I would say my take is I think Ladd McConkey just all the way back as a firm wide receiver 2, and we'll see what happens when QJ gets back here from injury. Now, my 8th takeaway is it's just called Route Watch, just certain route shares to look at around the league. First up, we have Troy Franklin, popular waiver wire pickup after week 2, where he had 20 PPR points, 90% of the routes. Climbs to 94%. Within the last 3 weeks, Pat Bryant, the rookie, hasn't done anything on the field in terms of per route stuff. We haven't even really talked about him in the rookie receiver report, but he is at the minimum eating into Franklin's routes, which have now been 80%, 79%, and then the lowest since week 1 at 70% of the routes this week. He's now somebody you can honestly drop in leagues. We'll talk about the Ravens tight ends from the utilization report. This was weird. You rarely see this, 2 tight ends both being over 70% of the routes. It didn't really equate to anything. It was still another Cooper Rush / Tyler Huntley game. Just something to keep an eye on heading into the bye here. On the other side of the bye with Lamar, what this might look like. Because if this sticks, I don't know that it will, but if it sticks, they'd both be usable in fantasy football. Then we have Josh Downs. It's tough. He has limitations in 2 wide receiver sets, but he's been so good the last few weeks. Smollett has it here. Over the last 3 weeks, Josh Downs leads the Colts in targets with 20. I put it in the top tweet here. 29.4% targets per run. That's an elite number. He is amazing on a per route basis. He had 11 PPR points last week, 16 this week. The issue is I just don't know that he ever gets promoted to 2 wide receiver sets. So the floor is nothing, because in any given week, he can run 60% of the routes and get 3 targets, and that's it. But you also have a week like this week where he runs 60% of the routes, gets 7 targets, and scores a touchdown. So the floor isn't there, but he is somebody that you can start to put in your flex, especially with these bye weeks if you need it. We talked about Stephon Diggs. I think he's somebody we've been looking at every single week. Here's the issue with the Patriots. I think Diggs is still somebody you can flex moving forward. I know he had a quiet week this week, but he's still somebody who looked so good the previous 2 weeks that I'd be fine rolling him out. But this is very similar to the Bills here, where not a single one of these players, from PFF, their snap count data here, not a single wide receiver or tight end ran over 75% of the routes in this game. I think the biggest issue you're going to see here is only 21 of 31 routes run for Hunter Henry. Outside of his one blow-up game, he's really not been that great for fantasy football. And then same thing, before, like, Booty's a fun story. He's a good player, but 23 routes of 31 pass plays, it's still not quite enough. It's like right at 80% of the routes. He's a fine boom-bust flex, but that's about it. We can then move to the 49ers, where Kendrick Bourne is a real guy. 40 routes of 47 pass plays here, 9 targets. He goes absolutely nuts again. I think he's going to stick for as long as like this 49ers room is banged up, where they don't have Kittle, Pearsall is not in, Juwan Jennings has a billion different injuries he's complaining about, whether he's saying he's got like 6 broken ribs and an ankle issue, whatever. For as long as that's happening, Kendrick Bourne is going to be a guy. He had 24 PPR points last week, 19 this week. And then also I'll shout out Jake Tonjes. 40 of 47 routes, 7 targets. He's somebody where in any game that Kittle is out can be started. And that's kind of the beauty of the 49ers is like across the board, anybody who gets hurt, the replacement's going to be startable in fantasy. Now that the replacements are clear in Tonjes and Bourne, those are now guys that we know are good or can get like put in our lineups based on who is available in a given week. Then we have Tampa Bay here, where we look at the routes run. We talked about Tez Johnson earlier. Ibuka gets hurt. And this is why like I didn't put Sterling Shepard as a start in my sneaky starts video. It's just everything else is so thin. Shepard, 20 routes, but only 3 targets. This Cameron Johnson guy, 4 targets on 12 routes. Maybe somebody to keep an eye on. But that's like super, super deep leagues. I'd be shocked. Like he went to like a D2 school, was undrafted, more of a special teams guy, but he did kind of come up big in this game. K. Dotton, 24 of 25 routes, 6 targets. He could be somebody that we could be streaming moving forward with Ibuka out, with Evans out, with Godwin out. So guys to keep an eye on there. Then my 9th takeaway is the Dolphins without Tyreek. We now have a 2-game sample here, and we can see with Tyreek, Achane in terms of volume, which is expected points per game based on your carries, your red zone usage, your targets, all of that. How many points should you be putting up? He was the RB12 in usage, RB7 in points per game. If we go to with no Tyreek in weeks 5 through 6, RB5 in usage, RB6 in points per game, but that's really just because like Rico Dowdle's been going so crazy. He goes from 19 points per game to 23.8 points per game. That's a big step up with a better role. And then an even bigger jump is from Jalen Waddle, wide receiver 46 in usage, wide receiver 31 in production. Over the last 2 weeks, he continues to outproduce his volume with wide receiver 17 in usage, wide receiver 7 in production. And then with Darren Waller on the bottom, snaps is the wrong thing, by the way. It should be routes. But his routes go from 36% to 68% to 78%. His points per game over that span, he has been the tight end 5 at 15.2 points per game. That is really good. Now, this thing is hanging on by duct tape between Tua at the podium, kind of throwing his teammates under the bus. The Dolphins losing games. Could Tua get benched? Could McDaniel get fired? Like, there's a billion things that could go wrong. But for as long as Tua, Achane, Waddle, Waller, and McDaniel are all on the field together, you know, or just like on the team operating together, this is going to be good for fantasy football. And then the last one, can we put some respect on Patrick Mahomes? All I said all offseason was this chart here of Mahomes in 2018, 26 points per game, then 20.5, then 25, then 21, then 24.6. Greatest quarterback since Tom Brady. Then 23 and 24, 17 points per game, 17 points per game, killing you in fantasy. You draft him in the 3rd round, you can't even start him over, a streamer, right? Well, we're through 6 weeks. He's the QB1 in points per game at 24.8, and no one seems to care. Like, you're going to go to the ECR on Fantasy Pros. I guarantee it this week, and the rest of season rankings are going to have Jaden Daniels and Jalen Hurts ahead. By the way, for me, it'd be Josh Allen, and then it'd be Patrick Mahomes rest of season. You're going to go to the Week 7 rankings. I don't know who Mahomes even plays in Week 7, but he'll probably be my QB2 there as well. He has done nothing outside of one dud game. He gets Las Vegas next week at home. Outside of the Giants game where he had 13 points, which isn't like terrible, he's had 26 in Week 1, 23 in Week 2, 27 in Week 4, 27 in Week 5, and then an exclamation point, 31.5 last night. He leads the Chiefs in rushing yards. He's unlocked this rushing ceiling where he has 4 rushing touchdowns now. He has more rushing yards than anybody else on this team. And can you be like, okay, well, he's a 30-year-old quarterback. That's not going to sustain over an entire season. Sure. But Xavier Worthy's working back from injury. Rashee Rice is back here next week. And the Chiefs are in a spot now where they can't just be like, okay, well, we're just going to do bully ball and Kareem Hunt the team to death and kick field goals and just win games. They're now 3-3. Kind of in the hunt right now where they just need to win games by any means necessary. Mahomes has now turned it up to another gear. This defense has regressed as well. where they're outside the top 20 in EPA per play allowed. Yes, they looked good against the Lions last night, but over the entire year, they haven't been all that great. They've at least regressed from like a top 3 unit in the NFL. So you're not going to get game scripts where the Chiefs have to score points. There's no running game to rely on. Mahomes is getting rushing touchdowns. He's getting weapons back. He's finding his deep ball. It's all coming together. Again, he's the QB1 in points per game, and it feels like nobody cares, you know? And this is what I sort of mentioned here, but I kind of went on this rant on October 11th over the weekend. I was doing my Dynasty Rankings update. I have Mahomes in my 107 in Dynasty, and I see him across the board, whether it's, industry rankings or it's stuff like Fantasy Calc and Keep Trade Cut. He's like the 25th overall player. He's like 8 months older than Josh Allen. I don't really understand this idea of like, okay, if Josh Allen's the 101, then Mahomes is down here. They were in back-to-back draft classes, right? 2017 and 2018. Same thing with Lamar. So I don't get it. Like, Mahomes is seen as this like old, dusty player. He's the best quarterback since Tom Brady, and he's like back on his shit, and nobody cares. So that's just a PSA for me. I'm sure you guys out there that are rostering Mahomes, you feel it, and you're like, holy shit, like this guy has been amazing every week that I've needed him. But it just feels like the general public like is still, just like QB5 rest of season, QB5 in week 7, and we'll just keep rolling with it. And nobody cares that he's been so money this year. And again, he gets Rashee Rice back, and he's only had Xavier Worthy back for like 2 of these games, really. But I'll also shine a light on Pacheco. Just something to keep an eye on. He didn't really score any points in this game, but his role was really good this past week. He put up his best utilization score of the year. Season high in snap share at 79%. Season high in rush attempt share. Season high in routes run. Season high in target share. Season high in short down and distance snaps. Season high in long down and distance snaps. So something to see. So something to just look at, right? Only 5.6 PPR points. We'll see if things stick. We'll see how things go. We'll see if Kareem Hunt's back in the mix next week. But let me just keep a little tab on what Pacheco's doing here moving forward. He might be rebounding ever so slightly. But that is going to do it for us today. That is our Week 6 recap as we look forward to Week 7 to win our matchups, dominate our leagues. I hope you guys are doing well. Teams are in shambles right now, but that's what we build for. That's why, we draft so many receivers to have, the backlog of firepower so that when things go to shit and we're rostering all the handcuffs and we're building our teams with wide receiver through the flex plus 1 or 2, this is what we built our teams for. So hope the injury luck isn't hitting you too hard. I have a couple leagues where I have Puka and Ibuka and it fucking sucks, but we'll see. Well, let's just hope for positive injury news. Let's just hope that we, continue to crush and do better this year. Again, this video sponsored by Underdog. When you use $5, you'll get $50 in bonus funds, or actually $100 in bonus funds with promo code Ron. I'll have links to that in the description in the comment section down below. But if you can't support there, just leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and I will see y'all in the next one.
Stones, like this froze, ice cold, ice around my body like